Hello, book people. I'm trying a new thing today. This is stories about books, or book stories, not the stories in the books, but the stories about how the books came to be. That's what I'll be talking about. Having a YouTube channel is a funny thing because it presupposes that someone out there is actually going to care about what you have to say about. Especially if you're trying to get subscribers. When it was just my own personal channel, I would post music videos that me and my siblings did. And of course, we think they're hilarious. But they're really just for us. And we're not trying to get an audience. So, in thinking about what the reading, writerly, booky community might want, Piggy, come here. And if you hear her scratching, I'm sorry. I tried to kick her out, but she wouldn't let me. Huh. This is Miss Piggy. Okay. So for this book story hour, I'm going to start with my first book, Justella, and tell you kind of what inspired it and how it came to be. I started writing it because I wanted there to be more clean romantic books in the world. I had found several favorite books like that, but there just weren't very many that I could find that didn't have a religious slant. Which, of course, there's nothing wrong with a religious slant, but I think that secular clean romance has a lot broader audience and is easier for more people to relate to. So I started just writing something that I would enjoy. Quite a few of those first scenes ended up being my version of favorite scenes that I had read in books or seen in movies. And that gave me a good kind of jumping off point to get used to writing emotion and compelling scenes. So I started writing it when my first baby was a newborn. She's almost 16 now, so it's been a while. And I got 10 pages of it written, 10 whole pages. And I thought, oh, this is going to be easy. I'm going to just get this right out and finish up this little story, and maybe I will give it to my sisters for Christmas or something. Which, of course, didn't happen. Because it took me a very long time. I kept nothing that I wrote in the first 3 years. Everything I wrote in those first 3 years ended up being deleted. Because as I kept going back to it, in the midst of mommying little kids and, my interest in it certainly ebbed and flowed. So keep going back to it and making it better and replacing things and reworking it. And it turned out that just everything from those first several years ended up on the cutting room floor. And of course, I'm grateful for that because it's a lot better for it. But it was a very long process. And luckily, something that I just did when I wanted to in my spare time so that I was able to enjoy it. One funny thing about how Gavin worked out. Gavin, our dear Gavin, who we all know and love, did not start out the way he is now. In my first iteration of this book, he was a punk and quite broody. He was standoffish and had a chip on his shoulder and was quite rude to Ella when they first met. But as I continued to chip away at the story and get to know my characters, I realized that that's really not who he was and not who I wanted him to be. So that is one of the many things that made me go back and rewrite the beginning, along with having to delete all of the heavy-handed backstory that I had built in. That was important for me to know, but not important for everyone to read. I rewrote the beginning of that book so many times. But that's what made it great. That sounds arrogant. That's what made it good, was that I kept redoing it. One thing that I discovered I really enjoyed was writing dialogue. That's actually something I discovered in college. I'd taken regular creative writing classes, doing short stories, and then I ended up in a playwriting class. So it was scripts of dialogue, which was terrifying for me at first, because one of the things I really love about writing is that I control the facial expressions and the little gestures and everything. And giving up that control was very difficult for me. But those 2 semesters of playwriting taught me how to write dialogue, because I could only rely on the words that my characters were going to say. And I discovered that I find dialogue fascinating, and you can say so much, but at the same time without saying much at all, because people, real true people, do not say exactly what they're thinking. They dance around it and they make inferences, and it's kind of something you have to decode. So I loved that. The reason that I based it in a made-up kingdom in an unspecified time was so that I didn't have to bow to history, so that I wasn't confined to a certain style of dress. I wasn't confined with politics or leaders or anything like that. I could put my characters wherever they needed to be. That's been interesting, because I run into problems sometimes when I try to categorize it, because it's not fantasy. There's no magic in it. There's no magic system that I've built, but it's also not history. But that's okay. It is what it is, and I'm very happy with the world of Dalthea that I built, and I think a lot of other people are too, I hope. So that's how that came about. It was something that I was just doing for me, and as I kept going on it, I taught myself how to write a book. And then when it was all finished, I figured I'd put it out there in the world and see how it did. And that book especially has done well for me. I still haven't put my finger on what it is about it that people really love, but it seems to resonate with a lot of people, which makes my author heart very happy. So that is Just Ella. I hope you enjoyed this first storybook, story hour, book story hour, book stories hour. I don't know what to call it, but that's the story of Just Ella.